The shop is open. This is the Talk About RC podcast, where we talk about RC racing, crawling, bashing, building, and dad stuff. Get back to work and listen, amigo. I'm your host, Pablo Guerrero. This episode is brought to you by ScaleMetalSupplies.com. Are you trying to learn how to do some scale metal fabrication? Check out ScaleMetalSupplies.com. They got everything to get you started, from tabs, from bend and braze parts. They're selling these new things called hot seats. They're scale seats for like dune buggies and moon buggies. They have a fast dash, which is a bendable dash that you can put into basically anything. And they have the new Whoopacabra chassis, which is an awesome starting point for your pre-runner build. Use code TACOBOUTRC to get 13% off at your next purchase at ScaleMetalSupplies.com. Keep burning, guys. All right, guys. Well, let's talk a little bit dad talk now. Dad talk and RC. So the intent for this morning was to get to the shop early. I have a shop, so it's not going into my garage or anything. Was to get to the shop early and spend some time there before the family woke up. Generally, I like to do my fabrication and that kind of stuff before business hours, kind of a thing. A lot of the times what ends up happening is it kind of rolls into the business day, and I just take the time and make it up somewhere else. But you know, right now we have so many projects that I have to do RC-wise. I have the SCX6 project and CCXRC project, and I really would like to get my Basecamp one done, because the Basecamp one is pretty close, or you know, quick turn, not a whole lot of fabrication there, just putting the kit together. And Tony's is really close for fabrication, just it's all detail stuff coming up next. So got to spend some time thinking about how to really pay good attention to that for interior stuff. So, but this SCS6 thing is that I've had some design stuff going, and now it's like I'm scared, gotta be honest. And so I'm trying to find out what kind of time I can figure out to put some real good dedicated time to it. And I was looking it over for the back half cage part, and it's not, I think the clearances aren't going to be what I hoped for, so I'm going to have to kind of see if I can change some things up, because the back cage has to pivot. That's the big thing. I want the back cage to pivot so that it can keep the same body on it once the body's wrapped. I was looking at the body, and the body's actually pretty easy to wrap, so I'm not too concerned about that. It's more of just the cage part that I have to figure. That part's going to be relatively simple, but then the I-beam is going to, or the twin beam is going to be, that's going to be tough. But so the question is that I'd like to pose is, when do you guys work on your stuff? I used to incorporate, it was funny, so during COVID, you know, obviously lots of family time. We still worked, I was still at the shop, but my family went to the shop a lot too. But during that time, it was, my kids were really interested because it was something that they could do to turn wrenches and all that kind of stuff. And now they're probably, my son's more of a driver, my daughter's not super interested in building stuff anymore, but she does some light stuff here and there. So it's like, where do you carve your me time out, right? So I don't go to the gym. My job's pretty, at times can be kind of, you know, physically demanding. So I don't go to the gym. I wish I did, but I just don't have the time to. I want to start training for a 5K, and I love going out and doing trail walks, doing our hikes, right? My goal is to get 120 miles in, and we're like a quarter of the way there right now. We're halfway through the year, so I've got a lot of work to do. It is possible to do 30 miles in 30 days. I've done that before. It's just finding the time. And now that we're doing all these different events, it's hard to find the time. So I'm trying to see, you know, when do people use their time? Is it realistic for you to do building stuff while you're on lunch? Do you just suck it up and stay up late after the kids go to bed? Right now, I'm struggling with that because my kids they're staying up late, super late, like way later than they should right now because it's summertime. So if I was to do that, I wouldn't even be able to get to my bench downstairs till probably 11 o'clock, and I'm already beat by then because the heat's, making you much more tired. So I'm having a problem getting motivated doing that, but I'm trying to tell my kids in bed by 10. If I can get them in bed by 10, I could get 2 solid hours in of wrench time. The weekends is also kind of one of those things where it's like every now and then it's a low-key day where I can, wrench downstairs while we have a movie on or something like that, but that's not super often. And right now I told my son, I was like, hey, I'm going to go to the shop, pick up some parts, and run back home, and he can put on a movie, and I'll be downstairs, and he's cleaning RC bodies while I'm tearing things apart. I got to tear apart the SCX6, and I got to tear apart my UDR and put together the base camp kit. So the base camp kit's probably going to go together tonight, or at least get started tonight. The bad thing is I have a half torn apart race car on my bench right now because I had to tear it apart to see where what broke. And so I'm actually going to maybe put that in baggies and put it off to the side and then tear into... First I'm going to do the SCX6, and then I'm probably going to do some quick layout on just paper and dimensions. And once I get that laid out, then I'm going to move over to my UDR and tear that apart. Really, really nice to pull that apart. I think I broke the front diff, and it'd be nice to tear that apart. So we're going to go out tonight, and if I could swing by the hobby shop and get a new front diff ring. Hopefully they have them in stock. So there's that. At some point this weekend, I need to run to the racetrack. There's a big race going right now, a regional dirt race, and so the hobby shop there is open for all the race car parts, and I need to get some caster blocks and C-hub or something like that for my son's car. I already ordered it from Associated, but they're not the fastest at shipping when it comes from direct from there, so I don't expect to see that till next weekend. So I'm going to get some parts so we can get out on the track next week and get him some more practice time, and then he can have extra parts for the weekend race. I think there's a weekend race next weekend, so we'll see how that goes. But as of right now, that's the plan for hobby time. But what's your guys' go-to time? Leave me a comment, or maybe a voice message. I guess you can do that on Spotify or on Anchor. Would be pretty cool. I'm going to figure out a better way of getting this information out, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, I'm interested on when people work on their stuff. It's always hard finding time, and I like to spend as much time with my family as I can, so hobby time is kind of my time. So well, let's move on to the next segment. This episode is brought to you by Die Hard RC. Are you into any kind of off-road RC? You need to stop by diehardrc.com and check out the venue they have in Snohomish, Washington. If you're in the PNW, you definitely have to swing by and check it out. Look for their events. They're free to come and watch. There's a fee to play at the park, but it is so awesome. They have an 8-scale dirt track, an off-road turf track. They have crawling, long crawling area, with a lot of scale village kind of things. And they also have a new bash park that has a new monster truck course in there. Go check them out, diehardrc.com, and we hope to see you there. It's a very friendly or family-friendly venue. Everyone's willing to help you out and get you started in the RC if you're just getting started. If you're a pro or if you're experienced RC, it's definitely a place to go and have some fun. All right, amigos, I need the little news flash stuff. So let's talk about some of the new stuff going out. I'm actually in the car. Hopefully my AC is not too loud on the mic. But the Losi came out. The Losi, I sound like an old man. Losi came out with the Baja Ray, the new Baja Ray 2, I believe. What are your guys' thoughts? My initial thoughts are, I think it's awesome. The heat wave is a winner chicken dinner. The changes that I watched RC Driver's review on it, or kind of showcase on it. It looks awesome. So it looks like it comes with 2 shocks per wheel, which is nice, and 2 spare tires versus 1, which is also nice. But then it also comes with a heavier price tag. So it comes with some other stuff too, like a sealed diff in the rear. It's interesting because one of the things that he was really talking about was that it's a different driving style. And I think that's something that I'd like to talk about is, what does that mean? I think sometimes when people say that, they kind of come across, and I don't mean that RC Drivers came across this way, but when I've heard it, in forums or Facebook or in person, when it comes around, when people say, oh, it's a different driving style, it kind of implies that you're not doing it right. But I think that it is something. I was talking to KLN about this, and he was saying you wouldn't take a drift car and go and race it around an on-road track. So it's kind of that same thing. It's one of the things that he said Losi was really trying to hammer down is that this is not the truck that you want to go big air on an 8-scale track. It's more of a scale driving experience, and I 100% agree with that connotation, or with that kind of thought, because I have the original Baja Ray, I have the Baja Ray V2, and then I also have a UDR, and I have built similar style, trailing arm, rear axle type vehicles for that type of driving, kind of King of the Hammers kind of stuff. And a trophy truck driving kind of Baja style truck is a whole different monster. They're not, you see these things carving on YouTube and like throwing up a ton of roost and things like that, but what you don't realize is that they're not made for hard pack, high traction surfaces. They're made for that silty, soft sand, dirt kind of area where you can really hang it out. Now, one of the things that I'm kind of surprised about that they didn't do to enhance that driving experience is lock the rear diff. When I locked the rear diff on my Baja Ray, it was a night and day difference. The locked rear diff made it so much easier to drive. It took a little bit of the torque twist. Well, I shouldn't say it took the torque twist out, but it took some of the sway out of it. And it planted it so much better around the corners. So I think if I was to get it, I would definitely do that next. Now, one of the things that I have to say is that I would agree with, this isn't made to take those big jumps. It's not a basher. It's not I think that's the thing that people see, is that they look at these kind of cars and they're like, ooh, they want to take off a big jump. They want to go as fast as they can. I actually think taming it down and driving it more scale is 100% the way to go. And I think that goes across the board with a lot of these other RC stuff. Like if you actually drive them how they're implied to, when it's the scale look type of vehicle, if you drive them in that scale like kind of world, they are so much more of a pleasure to drive. Now, if you want to bash and you want to go out and play, my opinion, that's when you get something like an Arma, you get a Granite or a Black Rock or something along that lines, an Outcast, and that's definitely a stunt kind of bash truck all around, will drive over anything. But when you get into these kind of worlds that are a scale-ish world, whether it be a monster truck, a trophy truck, a crawler, a rock bouncer, I think that's kind of like the attitude I have for people when they say, why do you need 5 different crawlers? Well, it's because they're designed for 5 different purposes. I have a trail truck crawler. I have a few trail truck crawlers, but I have the trail truck type vehicle. I have like the overland style vehicle. I have the U4 style crawler. I have the line killer type crawler. They're all meant for different type of driving styles. It's kind of like saying, your mall crawler Jeep versus your, Great American Crawl Rockstar crawler Jeep. There's a big difference, even though they're the same kind of car. They're just meant for different things. I see that a lot, like with the monster trucks, the solid axle monster trucks. That to me is like the perfect telltale. So the LMT is a fantastic beast of a monster truck. But if you drive that like a basher and you're getting crazy air and landing, of course you're going to break the solid axle housing. And if you get an aluminum housing, it's just going to go somewhere else and break. But if you drive it like a scale monster truck and you're jumping, what I like to say is, like, if you look at Monster Jam, and when you say you put a Monster Jam truck on its back bumper vertical wise, they're probably only jumping twice the length, maybe 3 times the length at most. And when they do the 3 times the length in height, that is like brake city, when they break the wheels off, that kind of a thing. So if you drive your RC monster truck in the same way, it's going to perform and handle great, and it's going to look scale. It's going to look great on film. A lot of people, we get a lot of conversations of like, how do I film this to make it look more scale? Drive it like it's supposed to look. Like, you're not going to drive a ultimate scaler class 0, class 1 truck and really be bouncing it all over the place, because then it doesn't look appropriate. You want to make that slow, creepy, crawly kind of look to it, and that makes, that shows the twist, and that shows the suspension working. It just makes when I slowed down and started doing stuff more in scale, it made the sport or the hobby way more enjoyable. Being able to actually see how the car works and let the tires do the work. Like when we're crawling, I'm constantly telling my son, let the tires do the work, like let it eat. So sometimes, I'll have him back off the throttle and just go slow and let the tires grip and pull you up. And sometimes I'm like, give it the beans, and you gotta really bump up. But if you build the car so that when you do give it the beans, it's just the same kind of wheel speed that scale would be, I think that's definitely more fun to look at. But back to these trophy trucks, or trophy-esque trucks, I think when you drive them in scale, when you look at something that's like an independent suspension, like a Associated Pro 4 or a Slash or something like that, those aren't generally considered a scale type vehicle. Not like the Baja Ray or the UDR or the, what was it called, the King of the Hammers, I think that's what it was, the Vetera. Or even a little bit of like the Element IFS. Like when you start getting into those scale scenarios, you have to change your driving style, and it makes it so much more fun to change that driving style. I've been going back and forth with my Baja Ray on if I'm going to tone it down and just run 2S versus 3S. I remember when I first got it and I ran it on 2S, I was kind of like, meh, it wasn't really that big of a deal. But then when I put it on 3S, it was a rocket ship and kind of uncontrollable. And then recently I've been kind of poo-pooing on my UDR because I feel like I've been breaking it every time I go out. And to me, Traxxas shouldn't break with the kind of abuse that I've been giving it. But then Tony, CCXRC, kind of called me out, and he's like, well, you're not really driving it like it's supposed to. You're taking it off these huge booters and getting, 8 feet of air and then landing it. Something's got to give, which I then realized he's right. So, it's all about driving it in its kind of environment and making it look awesome. So I think I'm going to fix it. We got a trip out to the coast here pretty soon. I want to fix it so I can go out and play, drive it in the sand, let it rip. I'm debating buying some paddles for mine, but it'll be fun to have both the UDR and the Baja Ray out there tearing it up. I think we're going to bring the monster trucks out there too, do some monster truck beach racing action. Should be a lot of fun. But what are your takes on driving the cars like they should? Do you think that if a manufacturer gives a car that goes fast, it's got to hold up to the speed regardless of the driving style that the car's supposed to be dialed in for? For instance, the new Baja Ray. Do you think it should hold up to the 3S no matter what you do to it, or do you think you should drive it like it's supposed to? These are questions that I think an experienced RC person would probably say it's designed for a certain drive and a certain look. I think the newer person getting into it wants to do it and kind of treat it like a basher, but would be very unhappy with how the outcome would be. Lots of traction roll in a car like that. I was arguing that driving style is an experience level driving style, almost expert level, to have it done right, because you have to have great throttle control. You have to have great connection to the car to understand what it's like to, go into the corners and to be able to carve and to be able to keep the car balanced. And the novice going out is going to have, that's a steep learning curve. And I'm interested in what people think. So leave us a message, leave us a comment. Tell me what you think about driving style as it pertains to certain vehicles. Do you have tiny hands? Do you like working on small things? Then head over to ccxrc.com to get all your small scale SCX24 parts and add-ons, performance things, everything you need to make that crawler do awesome at your next local hobby shop comp. Use code RCAmigos at checkout to get a 5% discount at your next order at CCXRC. All right, so maybe I should change this podcast name to Dads in Cars Getting Coffee. If you know, you know. So it's a nice quiet environment, I guess, to do a podcast. So, and I don't do a lot of driving, but when I do, I listen to podcasts, or I'm doing some other, just kind of daydreaming, thinking about all the work. So this actually passes the time pretty quick. En route to a project that I did a while ago, and someone broke a piece of neon. So the good news is it's an easy fix. The bad news is the color of neon they broke is like back ordered for another month and a half. So it might become a pricey endeavor for them, because either they wait or they get the whole line of words in the same color and like a different shade. So all kinds of problems to deal with, but that's not what we're here to talk about right now. So I started thinking this morning about talking about more dad stuff. That's why I was like, Dads in Cars Getting Coffee. Just got my coffee. I'm actually getting a late start this morning. I stayed up late knowing that I was going to be on the road in the late morning to go to this place. So I was like, I'm not going to go to the shop in the morning before this. There's no point. So I stayed up late working on the cars. We'll get to that in a little bit. But what I wanted to talk about was, for you dads out there, dads of multiples, when they're kind of close-ish together, how do you split time? I'm super, it's like, I would say it's super important to me to be involved in my kids' lives, like, and to like nourish their creative thinking and their things, almost to a fault. Like, there's been times where one of our kids has expressed something, like an idea of something, and it's like, all right, let's go. And then all of a sudden, we're down the rabbit hole building something, or going down the rabbit hole of YouTube, watching something together, just learning things. And I think it's super important to nurture that, because when I was in college, I guess, let's back it up even further. When I was in college, my college professor, I got a degree, a 5-year degree in sculpture, in metal sculpture. I got a BFA, so that's basically like a Bachelor of Arts plus. So you have to do a little bit more and learn all the arts to a certain level. So I got to kind of experiment in everything. I got to experiment in painting. I got to experiment in jewelry, metalsmithing, ceramics, wood design, sculpture, computer design. I think I already said painting. There's a couple others out there. But I got to do everything. I got to do it all, and I got to do it to like level 3 college course class. On top of that, we had to do, our curriculum at that time was super heavily weighted on art history and art theory, so we got to do a lot of that. But what I was getting at is that my college professor was fresh out of school. She had just got her master's and got her first teaching gig. And I was probably a second-year sculpture student at that time, just kind of understanding the development of where I wanted to go, kind of doing more metal work, wanted to kind of specialize in public art. And so she came in, and she didn't have a ton of experience, zero experience with metalworking. She did some metallurgy, like for like jewelry, but nothing about welding or machining or anything like that. So, and machining's probably a whole other level that I didn't explore until after college, but I kind of had an understanding of it. But what she did is that she helped me, I guess, learn how to learn, if that makes sense. So she helped me understand where to go and seek this information, how to find it, all that kind of stuff. So for me, that's super important to me, because without having that skill of tracking down, and now we have YouTube, now we have Instagram, all that kind of stuff, the internet. I mean, back then, YouTube was barely getting off. It was cat videos, basically. There wasn't Instagram. There wasn't, Facebook had just barely gotten started. Literally, I was one of those guys in our marketing design class, and the professor was like, "You guys should sign up for this. It's gonna be the next big thing." And I think I signed up for it. I might not have signed up for it. I don't know, but it was kind of that thing where it was in its infancy. So the technology was a super steep arc in my kind of generation. But what's cool now is that I use all that technology to learn. My job, I never build the same thing twice in my job or design the same thing twice. I have different iterations. Like, for instance, if I have a client that grows and has another location, I may have another iteration of the sign or a display that's inside or something like that. But it's always a new size, a new design, all that kind of thing. So I'm constantly learning different methods and different technologies to make that stuff work. And I think it's super valuable. In school, a lot right now in like the grade school level, they're not focusing a ton on STEAM education. And I say STEAM instead of STEM, but including the arts in there. And I think that right now in our digital age, the arts are becoming more and more digital and more copacetic with technology. And so, to understand how to create art by looking with your technology and by understanding how to hone your craft, all that kind of stuff, by, it's as simple as, showing your pictures on a forum or on an Instagram and getting feedback. A lot of people do that. It's an attention kind of seeking thing when you put it on Instagram and whatnot. But depending on how you word it, it might be more of a critique kind of a thing. Like, what do you think of these shadows? And that's the call to action for conversation. How would you do this, or how would you do that? And then that gets a conversation going. So with me and my kids, what we do is we go and we try to learn everything as possible. Hopefully my blinker isn't too loud. So I just realized that. But we try to learn everything. When they ask about how to do something, or if they could show interest, I'm like, let's go. So right now, circling back to dads of having multiples, my son is interested in racing. I see the development of him with racecraft and understanding how that works with racing. He doesn't really understand, he understands the physics of the car a little bit, but he doesn't really understand the mechanics of the car yet. I think that's going to come. He's still young. He just turned 9, but he enjoys the competition and the kind of craft of racing. And to be honest, not everyone is mechanical. Not everyone gets that kind of bug. So if he's just into racing and understands the dynamics and the physics of, controlling that car around the track, then great. He'll pick up something else. But I've been spending a lot of time with him kind of doing that. And we spend a lot of time doing that and other RC, if it's racing monster trucks or if it's crawling, all that kind of thing. So my daughter is a few years older. She's 11. And I kind of noticed, I was like, you know what? We need to do something together that's ours, kind of a thing. So we started looking at different things. We wanted to do, she likes to hike. I don't think she likes to hike with the RCs like I do, but, she wants to hike more. So we're going to start doing that. We want to start doing a 5K or training for one. But the thing that she's really, really taking off with is graffiti art. So one of the questions I asked on Instagram stories, got questions for the podcast, let me know. And the question that I got from the podcast or from the stories was from CCXRC, my homeboy Tony. And he said, what other hobbies am I into? And it's interesting because I don't really, my kids are my hobby. And that sounds really corny and really cheesy, but it's like painfully true. My upbringing was I had a great family environment. Like every family, there's always stuff that goes on that, you forget about or that probably weren't the best of times. But I had a great family environment. I had a neighborhood around me for the formative years that was awesome. But the neighborhood that was around me was like my block. And then everywhere else outside of that neighborhood was kind of, and I hope I don't offend anyone, but I come from it, so it was kind of ghetto-ish. So it was pretty hardcore, lots of crime, kind of hard knocks kind of a thing. So, but, I also went without for a long time. It was just my mom and me, and we lived with our grandparents for a while, and, it was my family provided awesome for me, but they also instilled a lot of work ethic for me. Like, I had to work for something. My grandpa was an entrepreneur. My grandma, they both didn't have a very higher education. They stopped at middle school, and my grandfather ended up owning a business for 35 years, and my grandmother ended up retiring from Boeing as an electrical engineer that got trained on the job. So very self-made family, and it was very cool because learning that aspect and kind of going without for a while made me appreciate a lot of these things. And now, I want to, obviously, you kind of want to one-up your childhood with your kids, and I think I'm doing it almost to a fault, meaning I think that my kids, they'll probably cringe if they hear it, and I even cringe when I say it, but I think they're a little spoiled. So I'm trying to kind of backpedal and get them to be, they're humble, but I'm trying to get them to be more appreciative of what they have. My daughter gets it. She's older. My son still works on it, I guess. But so, you know, I'm trying to kind of like give them every opportunity they ask for. You know, if they want to learn about space, well, let's find a museum, or let's go to a museum in another state that is really good about space or whatever. We'll make a trip out of it and figure that kind of thing out. And when I say state, I mean like road trip stuff, like a joint next door kind of a thing. But so my daughter lately has been taking up graffiti, and it has been awesome. And at first I was like, oh, this will be all right, you know, and I didn't think it would be anything. But then I realized it's probably going to cost as much or more to do this endeavor as it does for RC. So I'm going to have to kind of like tighten things up a little bit, because paint ain't cheap. And so the way we're doing it is I got her, our house, if I would swear, if you walked into our house and looked in our cabinets and all the art supplies, you would think that we're probably dressed up in tie-dye and Birkenstocks, like some kind of hippie family, because our house is just nothing but art supplies, and we're constantly doing crafts and projects, that kind of a thing. And so what I ended up doing to give her a canvas is I went out and bought some OSB plywood and screwed it to our deck post. We have an elevated deck. So I screwed it to the deck post and I said, let's go, you know, start sketching. And we went to the graffiti store. Shout out to Jag Artworks here in Everett, Washington, the next city over. They helped us out a lot, kind of understanding the different tips, meaning tips as in like spray tips for graffiti cans and all that kind of stuff, and paints and things. So we've gotten some supplies from them, and we're going to try to be a part of their community to learn this even more. But we got it all set up, and the other day we went out and bought the wood, screwed it to the posts, and she ended up painting the wood a solid color. We've done some murals through my business, and so I have buckets of cool colors of paints at the shop, just kind of leftover buckets. And so we just grabbed a random one, and it turned out to be a nice dark blue color, and we're like, hey, let's go. So we've painted these boards, and then we started graffitiing, and we came home after church one day, and I was like, let's go. And we just jumped right in. And it has been so much fun since then. I mean, before that, we were watching videos, just like how we got back into RC, where we started watching YouTube videos and watching, you know, all that kind of stuff to, you know, kind of see what the trends are and see what people are using. And it was awesome. So we've been drawing, and we started an Instagram, Bomba Fabrica Fuego, which means bomb factory fire. So we started that. We've been posting our sketches and some of our paints, and it's funny because I feel like a total dad, because I'm like, do I use the words that they use for what the artwork is called, or do I just say we're painting stuff? So, but it's been a blast. We really enjoy it. But I guess where I was going, you know, one of the things I was talking about, kind of trying to hint at, is like, how do you guys give equity and time with your family? That, you know, I think time is the most valuable commodity we have. You know, money doesn't have that value that time does. And so, you know, even though, you know, you need money to spend time sometimes, it's kind of a chase that you're always trying to find what that balance is. So, you know, it's important to me to be around, even though we're super busy with work all the time. You know, I want to include my family, the kids especially. My wife's already included in that, but I want to include my family in, you know, the day-to-day, and then also kind of do stuff that they want to do. And, you know, I'm not talking like, let's go and, I don't know, go to a carnival or something like that. I'm talking about constructive stuff, learning. You know, they don't know they're learning, but they're learning when they say, can we try this? And we're finding all the information about it. last night we sat down and watched a couple YouTube videos from Wired Magazine about rock skipping, because we're going to go stay at a Airbnb sometime this summer near a river. So we're like, let's learn how to rock skip the crazy way. So just little stuff like that. It's so much fun. So leave me a comment. I feel like I end every one of these sections with a leave me the comment. Hopefully we find a place to listen to these where you can leave a comment, and that would be very cool. So, if it's on YouTube, I know you can leave a comment on Spotify or a review. If you leave a review, that'd help out a lot, either on Spotify or on Apple. Or on Spotify, I think you can leave a voice message now too. So, let me know your input, or just tag us in, tag RC Amigos in your story post about it. That would be awesome. Well, let's go on to the next section. Okay, amigos, I think we're going to end it here. I think this has been an awesome second episode. If you guys can, please share the word. Tell people about us, and keep on listening. So we're going to end it here because we've got a race tomorrow. I'm not going to race. My son's going to be racing. He's going to be in the novice class again. We got a new setup for him. We added another tooth to his pinion. What else did we do? We put some timing up. I'm going over a pretty bumpy road right now. I don't know if you can hear it bouncing in my voice, but added some timing, and we got him a new shell. So it's all painted up America style. So look forward to pictures to that from that. We've got that coming up. I'm going to be working on their monster truck course out there at Die Hard. I'll be doing some crawl videos out there. It's been a minute, so I might take all my crawlers out there and just run them just to capture some video and to just have some fun. I haven't done it in a while, so that'll be interesting. So if you have comments or if you have suggestions of some topics to talk about, send them our way. You can find us on Instagram at RC Amigos, RC_Amigos, or you can find us on YouTube at RC_Amigos. It might just be RC Amigos, but either way, you'll find us. Shoot us a message, shoot us a comment. We've got some plans for next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about practice. We're going to race practice. We're going to talk about race results. I might do a live play-by-play of one of the heats. We'll see how it goes. And then we're going to talk about creative process and whatever new comes out. So let's have a great rest of your day. If you're hearing this before the weekend, have a great weekend. Hope you guys stay safe out there. Get some family time in. And until next time, amigos, we'll see you then.